Picture this. While you were deciding what to have for breakfast this morning, approximately 400 trillion mosquitoes across the planet were making their own meal plans. And you were on the menu. Every single one of your ancestors, stretching back through an unbroken chain of 10,000 generations, had to survive long enough to reproduce while being actively hunted by the most prolific serial killer in the history of the world. Not a saber-toothed tiger, not a volcanic eruption, not starvation or predators or any of the dramatic threats we imagine when we think about ancient survival. A 2-milligram insect that you can literally blow away with a gentle exhale. Here's the math that should keep you awake at night. Mosquitoes have been refining their assassination techniques for 100 million years. They've had more practice killing things than any organism that has ever existed. Meanwhile, modern humans have only been around for 300,000 years. For most of that time, we were completely defenseless. No citronella candles, no bug spray, no window screens, no understanding that the irritating buzz in the darkness was actually a flying syringe loaded with enough pathogens to wipe out entire civilizations. And yet, against mathematical impossibility, we survived. Not just survived, we thrived. We built pyramids while being systematically drained of blood. We developed agriculture while malaria was killing our children. We invented writing, philosophy, and art while sharing the planet with something that has caused more human deaths than every plague, every war, every natural disaster, and every accident in recorded history combined. Recent estimates suggest mosquito-borne diseases have killed approximately 52 billion people throughout human existence. That's more than half of everyone who has ever lived. The creature that's probably within 20 feet of you right now, waiting for you to go to sleep, represents an evolutionary success story while entire species went extinct, while continents drifted. While the climate oscillated between ice ages and tropical periods, mosquitoes just kept getting better at finding us, biting us, and killing us. So here's the question that should be impossible to answer. How did ancient humans, equipped with nothing more than whatever they could figure out through trial and error, manage to survive 300,000 years of being prey to something that had already spent 100 million years perfecting the art of killing? How did we make it through the most lopsided predator-prey relationship in natural history, where the predator was invisible, indestructible, and literally engineered to hunt us? The answer involves a story stranger than fiction. Ancient humans didn't just stumble through this war and get lucky. They developed counter-strategies so sophisticated that modern science is still trying to understand how they worked. We're talking about geographical chess games played across continents, botanical warfare using plants we're only now discovering contain the same active compounds as modern insecticides, evolutionary genetic modifications that turned inherited diseases into survival advantages, and early warning systems so effective they guided human migration for tens of thousands of years. But perhaps most remarkably, they did all of this without understanding what they were actually fighting. They had no concept of disease transmission, no knowledge of parasites, no microscopes to see the malaria parasites that mosquitoes were injecting into their bloodstream. They just knew that certain places were cursed, certain seasons were deadly, and certain practices kept their families alive. This is the story of how humanity survived its most successful predator. Not through superior strength or intelligence, but through careful observation, cultural knowledge transmission, and ultimately, by allowing the war to literally rewrite our DNA. The mosquito changed us. And somehow, impossibly, we're still here to tell the story. Let's start with something that sounds almost too simple to be real. For tens of thousands of years, ancient humans survived mosquitoes by simply refusing to live where mosquitoes wanted to kill them. This wasn't random. This was one of the most successful public health campaigns in human history, and it happened completely by accident. A groundbreaking study published in 2023 used climate modeling and archaeological data to map human settlements across Africa over the last 100,000 years. What they found was stunning. Human populations and high-risk malaria zones lined up like opposite puzzle pieces. Where mosquito-borne death was highest, humans were consistently absent. Where malaria risk dropped, humans moved in. This pattern held across continents and cultures that had no contact with each other. Think about how this knowledge actually got passed down. No books, no websites, no government health departments. Just the brutal lesson that families who camped near the marsh lost their children, and families who stayed on the high ground didn't. Generation after generation, the survivors were the ones who learned, consciously or not, that certain landscapes were cursed. This is collective pattern recognition operating across geological timescales. Communities developed an invisible geography of death zones without ever understanding why those zones were deadly. They just knew. Stay away from standing water after sunset. Don't sleep in the low valleys during the wet season. The swamp takes children. This knowledge system was so effective that it actually shaped human migration patterns across entire continents. When climate shifted and malaria zones expanded or contracted, human populations moved accordingly, like a slow-motion dance of survival spanning thousands of years. But avoidance only works until you need water, and water is where mosquitoes breed. So ancient humans had to develop active countermeasures, and what they came up with would make a modern chemist proud. Fire was the first and most powerful weapon in the anti-mosquito arsenal, but not for the obvious reasons. Yes, smoke keeps mosquitoes away, but the real genius is in how it works. Mosquitoes hunt by detecting the carbon dioxide you exhale, your body heat, and the specific cocktail of chemicals your skin produces. Smoke doesn't just create a physical barrier. It scrambles their entire targeting system. To a mosquito's sensory apparatus, sitting near a smoky fire makes you essentially invisible. But ancient humans took this concept much further. They didn't just burn any wood. They experimented, plant by plant, until they discovered botanical mosquito warfare. Aboriginal Australians burned eucalyptus and sandalwood. Ethiopian communities used specific varieties of basil. Native American groups developed complex smoke blends using cedar, sage, and dozens of other plants chosen specifically for their insect-repelling properties. A 2022 study testing traditional plant smoke blends from 6 different continents found repellency rates exceeding 85% against multiple mosquito species. Asterisk, if you want to dive deeper into ancient survival strategies, make sure to subscribe for more episodes. These weren't lucky accidents. This was systematic experimentation across thousands of generations. Someone noticed that burning this particular leaf meant fewer bites than burning that one. They told someone else. The knowledge spread. Over time, entire cultures developed sophisticated pharmacological libraries for insect protection, with no formal science to guide them except careful observation and the practical incentive of not being eaten alive. Then there was mud, which sounds primitive until you understand the science behind it. Covering exposed skin with thick mud works on 2 levels. First, it creates a physical barrier that mosquito mouthparts genuinely struggle to penetrate. But more importantly, mud masks the chemical signals that make you attractive to mosquitoes in the first place. Modern research shows that mosquito attraction is largely determined by skin microbiome chemistry. Different people produce different cocktails of skin bacteria and compounds, which explains why some people get destroyed at barbecues while others walk away untouched. Mud essentially functions as biological camouflage, replacing your human scent signature with the smell of wet earth. The most remarkable discovery, though, came from a cave in South Africa. In 2011, archaeologist Lynn Wadley found 77,000-year-old bedding made by early humans. Not just any bedding. Bedding constructed from specific plant materials, including leaves from trees that contain natural insecticidal compounds. The beds appeared to have been burned periodically and remade, creating a sleeping environment that was actively hostile to mosquitoes and other parasites 77,000 years ago. That's early Homo sapiens barely out of their evolutionary starting gate, already applying botanical pesticides to their sleeping areas. This wasn't instinct. This was accumulated knowledge, passed down through observation and experimentation, refined over generations into a practice so effective that modern science is still catching up to understand why it worked. But perhaps the most extraordinary part of this survival story is written directly into human DNA. Because when something kills half your children before they reach adulthood, evolution responds with desperate creativity. The human genome is full of scars from our war with mosquitoes. Sickle cell trait, found in over 300 million people worldwide, exists because having one copy of what is essentially a genetic disorder makes you significantly harder for malaria parasites to kill. The parasite invades your red blood cells, but the cell's altered chemistry disrupts the parasite's life cycle. This mutation spread through West African populations roughly 10,000 years ago. Human settlement patterns in high malaria zones began to change. Populations started moving into areas that had been biological exclusion zones for tens of thousands of years. The genetic protection was literally unlocking new territory. DNA had changed in a way that made previously uninhabitable land survivable. An entire continent that had functioned as a mosquito-guarded death zone became accessible to human settlement. Sickle cell isn't alone. G6PD deficiency affects over 500 million people and provides meaningful protection against severe malaria. Thalassemia is common across Mediterranean regions where malaria was historically endemic. The Duffy blood group, absent in most people of West African descent, makes one species of malaria parasite completely unable to infect red blood cells. Evolution doesn't negotiate clean deals. These protective mutations come with their own costs. Sickle cell disease in its full form is devastating. G6PD deficiency causes its own health complications. But evolution's math is brutal and simple. If carrying a genetic variant keeps enough children alive to reproduce, the species will carry that variant regardless of the individual cost. This is why the global distribution of genetic disorders maps almost perfectly onto the historical distribution of malaria. Millions of years of mosquito pressure literally rewrote human genetics, creating a mosaic of protective mutations that still defines health risks in different populations today. There's a dark irony in realizing that the most successful public health intervention in human history might be a tiny insect that has killed more people than any war, famine, or natural disaster. Mosquitoes shaped where humans live, how human populations evolved, which genes are common in which parts of the world, and which diseases we carry today. They killed Tutankhamun. Traces of malaria parasites were found in his mummified blood. They contributed to the fall of Rome through the Pontine marshes. They killed more soldiers in World War II than bullets did. The construction of the Panama Canal cost over 20,000 lives, mostly to mosquito-borne disease, before mosquito control finally made the project survivable. But ancient humans survived all of it. Not through a single brilliant innovation, but through the slow, careful accumulation of hard-won knowledge. They mapped the geography of danger and avoided it. They discovered botanical chemistry through trial and error.